unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello, welcome. I'm going to have some fascinating chats on tonight's program, and here's what you'll learn if you catch them. 2 years ago, a man raised alarm bells. He warned that chatbots could cause delusions in vulnerable people. Now, cases are appearing. Suppose you're unfortunately dealing with a psychiatric episode of mania. A large language model is going to act with you like a sort of yes man, validating your wild ideas instead of raising alarm bells that you're going through a psychiatric episode. It was all theoretical a few years ago, but now it's actually happened. So in 10 minutes time, that man who raised that alarm bell to unpack real stories and tell you what AI sycophancy is and who's at risk. And later in the program, we get a little spicy as we answer why couples' oxytocin sinks and peaks 40 minutes after doing it. That's the love hormone that flows through your body after, well, you know. You'd think it would happen right after the event, but no, a peak 40 minutes afterward. So should you cuddle after you do the thing to best bond with your partner? That is what we'll answer at the beginning of next hour. All right, those are just some of the interesting chats we'll have on tonight's show, but for now, let's jump in with Stupid News.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
And an international nuclear incident being caused by jellyfish news. We go to northern France, where a gaggle of flesh-hungry zombie jellyfish have swarmed a nuclear plant and caused a critical shutdown. At least some of that story is true. We are joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five, reporting live from the scene of his apartment in London, England. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, my friend, it's all good. Very worrying. A nuclear incident closer to the doomsday clock than we've ever been. It's not America. It's not Russia. It's North Korea. No, it's jellyfish, my friend.
It is jellyfish in France, which for whatever reason is a funny combination to me. Now, French officials are stressing that this is a non-nuclear event, more of a nuisance, poses no harm. But my question for you is, can we believe French officials? And how did the jellyfish get past these barriers to make it into this nuclear plant's water intake facility? I don't know. I'm thinking this is an apocalyptic event and officials are just downplaying it.
Okay, would you have put on your things that could kill us in 2025 a jellyfish-based nuclear disaster?
Yeah, that would have been number one, obviously.
Number one, yeah. So basically, it's part of the cooling process. Now, I didn't realize this until quite recently, that most nuclear sites or power plants are located near large bodies of water. I'd actually visited one in the last few months, and that was near a site, and I just thought it was maybe because they like to go rowing a boat.
Wait. Jellyfish taking over a plant, Tony Five visiting a plant. The dots are starting to connect here.
And you know I do like jellyfish. I'm on the jellyfish dating app, as you know, Ginder. So basically, I didn't realise that. So they do it because obviously these power stations generate so much heat that you need to have a constant form of cooling. And that's obviously the cheapest way is to have water. I did ask them if they wanted to connect to my tap at home. They said no, they'd rather have a larger body of water. So what are you going to do?
You tried to do your best to solve this problem. But anyway, there are like barriers to the water intake, but apparently these jellyfish have such gelatinous bodies.
Yeah.
Because they're jellyfish. Of course they're gelatinous.
Exactly. They have filters, they have fences, they have all sorts of things to prevent any sort of animal or whatever going through. But jellyfish are notoriously good, sort of like thieves. They were in the original cast of Ocean's 11.
They were. It was called Ocean's Jelly
11.
Yeah, that's not my best work in terms of joke writing. But yeah, they slipped through these fences. Yep. And because of the warm weather, plankton have been thriving in warm parts of the water that aren't usually warm. Near this nuclear power plant on the coast of northern France.
It's the coast, no, North Sea, yeah.
North Sea.
Because it's a canal, so it's fed in by the North Sea. That's how it's come in.
Look at you.
David, there are a lot of things I know. There are a lot of things I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know, and I do know what I do know. So very simply, I know that it was obviously this power plant. It's EDF who supply my energy here in the UK. It's not far from us. Between Dunkirk and Calais, we can get there maybe in about an hour's drive.
Wait, the war between France and the United Kingdom, they signed a treaty and now they're exchanging electricity?
Correct. We exchange electricity. I'll be honest with you, we do have some jellyfish working for us in the security services. I'm not saying they're related, my friend. I'm not saying they're related.
Wow, so the Anglo-French wars are over. You guys signed a treaty. Well, this is breaking news.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was a treaty, more of a leafy, but I would say possibly 3 years ago, 2021.
Next thing you know, they're going to open up a tunnel that connects France and the UK.
I wouldn't go that far, mate. I've got my ear to the ground. I haven't heard any tunnel building, and we still currently hate the French. We don't like baguettes, and we don't even like French brie. It has to be English brie.
Is that even a thing? Anyway, back to this story.
Yes.
Officials saying the plant just had to be shut down. There was no impact on safety.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be funny to be like getting your electricity, living your life, and then there's a grid shutdown, a dark out, and they're like, oh, what happened? Did the system shut down because of a thunderbolt or whatever? It's like, oh no, it's the jellyfish again.
70% of France is powered by nuclear energy, dude. That means the rest of the 19%, God knows, is by like sort of wind power, I guess.
Wouldn't it be like coal or hydroelectric or?
I've never heard of those things, David. I don't know what you're talking about.
Coal denier. But yeah, this is apparently a problem. It happens to nuclear power plants in Sweden. It is rare, though, officials are saying. It is rare.
Oh my God, a nuclear engineer, Ronan, he said that these things managed to slip through that, like the first barrier. So they got through the first one. So it's like getting out of the prison cell. But when they got to the prison guard, the prison out rail, that's where they got caught, my friend.
So they didn't quite make it in. Could you imagine like the whole system gets gummed up by jellyfish? You'd think the engineers would design for this, wouldn't they?
Weirdly, the area is surrounded, like, obviously by, like, native jellyfish, and they'll have all sorts of marine life. You never know. There could be a shark or a whale could get in there next week. We never know. If the sea life turn against us, I believe that's where they will begin.
Yeah, and then what about, like, nuclear fallout, exposure, uranium?
Meltdown, my friend.
But also, can't these jellyfish get, like, impacted by the radiation and grow 3 eyes or something like that?
I think they already have 3 eyes and 15 legs anyway with jellyfish, so I don't think... Or perhaps that's why jellyfish look like that. Who knows what started Chernobyl?
Who knows? Could have been the jellyfish, maybe.
I believe it probably was jellyfish and it was a cover-up. This is what they call big nuclear.
Big nuclear.
Yeah, I would be worried. I mean, you're taking it very, very lackadaisically.
Lackadaisically?
Well, that word, you're taking it, but I mean, this pushes us 1 minute closer to midnight, my friend. We are all on the doomsday clock.
All right, add it to the list of things you need to worry about in 2025. Jellyfish causing nuclear fallout.
I mean, who knows? They're currently cleaning it out, and I think they're going to get it back on track if they haven't got it on already. But yeah, like 2 units were like absolutely knocked out, and they've got the people in. I don't know whether they'll have to get like a jellyfish expert. When you think about it, they'll just turn into mush, because I'm imagining jelly is like Jell-O. So then they just bring it out with a scoop. Is there someone with a huge rubber glove?
I can't speak to what they do, but I do know one news outlet that investigated this story interviewed someone called a jellyfish expert.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
We got to get a jellyfish expert on the show, by the way. What a great job. Maybe the best job.
I think we should have a feature called Experts in Experts, and it's basically the weirdest experts we could possibly find. There's gonna be an expert in everything, right? So we'll definitely find one. So there's gonna be like a cockroach expert or a jellyfish expert or an expert in fixing the X button on a laptop. So I think that's what we should do.
That must be a great call to get. Like, it's very not that often that major media outlets are in need of a jellyfish expert. But this expert said the incident was unsurprising given the hot temperatures of Western Europe this summer, because the hot temperatures mean more plankton mean more jellyfish, and bada bing, bada boom, nuclear fallout, we're all zombies.
You can imagine the editor in the newsroom, guys, get me a jellyfish expert, slamming his fist on the ground, and they're going through their Rolodex. But anyway.
Tony Five, foreign correspondent in London, England, will join us later in the program for advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday. I think that's what it's named.
I believe so.
Coming up after the break, could a chatbot push somebody mentally unwell towards delusions? A doctor warned about this hypothetical 2 years ago, but now we are seeing cases of just this. Up next, a curious conversation with that doctor about these cases, who's vulnerable, and the new guardrails AI needs.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888 505 6644.
In the 70s, 4 young women were found dead. For nearly 50 years, their cases went cold. I'm Nancy Hixt, a senior crime reporter for Global News. In the season finale of Crime Beat, I share how investigators uncovered shocking evidence of a serial killer and hear exclusive interviews with the killer's family. Listen to the full season of Crime Beat early and ad-free on Amazon Music by asking Alexa to play the podcast Crime Beat.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Two years ago, my next guest raised a curious alarm bell. He warned that chatbots could help crystallize delusions in vulnerable people. Seemed like a hypothetical, but now real cases are surfacing. This is all to say, people who are mentally unwell interacting with chatbots under certain circumstances have really lousy outcomes. So we will unpack why human-like AIs mirror and magnify our beliefs, and how unusual ideas can tip into illnesses, what AI sycophancy means, and how all this new technology that can create psychiatric risk can also help solve it. This is going to be an interesting chat. I'm here with Dr. Søren Dinesen Østergaard, a medical doctor and a professor at Aarhus University in Denmark. Søren, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
The term delusion gets thrown around a lot, but in the context of researching in psychiatry for medicine, what exactly is a delusion?
Delusions are false beliefs that are firmly held despite solid evidence of it not being true. And a classical case would be persecutory delusions. That would be delusions of being surveyed, delusions of being followed, delusions of being harassed, for instance, by a government or intelligence service, while it is definitely not true, paranoid delusions. So that's sort of the medical definition of a delusion.
Thank you for that. What made you suspect a few years ago when that first announcement of ChatGPT came out and everyone was so excited about it? What made you suspect that vulnerable people may interact with these chatbots and not have great outcomes?
I was equally excited as the next person and was completely fascinated by this technology, which seemed like such a huge leap forward. But I also had some concerns, as you mentioned, that people who were prone to severe mental illness, for instance, psychosis or also bipolar disorder, could have some experiences with this technology that would be unfortunate or would even push their illness in the wrong direction.
So what did you have in mind? Could you give me some examples of what you were maybe a little worried about, or a little bit, if this technology didn't have the proper guardrails, some outcomes that could happen?
Yeah, so at least at this stage, when we're now a little bit wiser, the idea or my concern is that it tends to be too affirming, and that people who are maybe, let's say, slightly off target, off reality initially, their ideas are iteratively being confirmed by the chatbots, and that will move them further and further away from reality. Some of them eventually ending up with outright delusions, as I described before. I think that's the mechanism, the underlying mechanism of some of the cases we are seeing now.
And I don't know that there's a wide study about it, but there are some reported cases. What are some of the things, protecting the people who are involved with them specifically, but what are some of the things we're observing that are actually happening these days?
Well, some of these cases are publicly available. They have been reported in major news outlets, including the New York Times and other and similar outlets. And some of them are people experiencing sort of grandiose delusions where they, in the process of interacting with the chatbots, seem to get the idea that they have developed this brilliant idea, like solving the climate crisis or a phenomenal business idea that will make them wealthy. Whereas when you look into it, it's off. It's not real, and it's not something that can be realized. It's just something that is occurring in this sort of isolated environment between this particular user and the chatbots.
Is it because the chatbot seems a little too human and it's a little too positive? For example, if I ask the chatbot to tell me feedback about my $1 million business idea, even if it's nonsense, it's going to say, hey, great, maybe do this, but that's all great.
I think that's definitely part of the mechanism driving this. It seems as though the listeners may be familiar with the term sycophancy, which describes this general tendency towards flattery and affirming and validating the user's ideas and their responses. And I think if you're going off track, having that direction confirmed consistently will put you further away from reality. And I think that's definitely part of what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Flattery can just sort of make grandiose ideas worse and can't really help people that are starting to get in a bit of a mental corn maze, not being well.
Exactly.
If you could design guardrails to catch this early, to raise red flags, to sort of warn people the dangers of when someone's unwell interacting with generative AI, what would those guardrails be, or what would you want people to know?
Well, interestingly, last week I basically tried one of these correspondences where I pretended that I was at the very least in a hypomanic state, maybe actually in a manic state. My mood was elated. I was risk-taking. I had a business idea that was somewhat odd. And in that correspondence with ChatGPT, that was the 4.0 model. That was before the ChatGPT 5 came out, just the free version. It basically just supported me in my ideas, and it quickly picked up on my emotional state as well. So it was sort of spiraling out of control in a positive direction. And that may sound good, but for a person who is maybe developing a manic episode, that is not good.
No.
That could actually go completely wrong. At the end of the correspondence, I broke character with ChatGPT and saying, what if I told you that we had this correspondence just for me to prove a point that it might be a bit dangerous or risky for people prone to mental illness to have this kind of correspondence with you here referring to the chatbot. And he said, yeah, I can definitely see that you're onto something. And this is something that is probably related to my tendency to confirm the user when we're having these correspondences. So what I was thinking was, if the model could add that kind of meta-analytical level, because clearly when addressed, when prompted, it can figure out what's going on. If that could be implemented sort of on top of the correspondence, the chats that people have with these bots, maybe it could figure out that the correspondence is moving in a wrong direction. But I will leave that up to the people that are working with this from a computationally perspective. This is something they must be able to solve.
What you just described to me is one of the most fascinating interactions I've heard of on a generative AI platform. Can you just dumb that down a bit for me? So you pretended to be in an unwell state, a manic state.
Yeah.
It gave you validating advice that could be risky for someone in a real manic state.
Exactly.
And then you asked the bot to analyze what you had just done.
Yeah.
And it kind of knew what it did.
It nailed it completely. The explanation afterwards, it pointed out all the points, all the places in our correspondence where I was sort of maybe a bit off in the positive direction, right?
Yeah.
Where my mood was too high, where I was doing risky things, and I had ideas that were maybe a bit grandiose, and said that this is unfortunate, but this is something that can happen in these correspondences.
So why can't the authors of generative AI platforms employ the same technique, use the models to analyze what's happening to see if the interaction could potentially lead to someone having a bad outcome if they're mentally unwell, is what you're saying?
Exactly. That would be my point.
Well, it's really interesting that you raised the red flag. It seems like your predictions have come true and you're kind of offering a potential solution. I know you don't code AI models, but it has been a really interesting chat with you, Søren. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Søren Dinesen Østergaard is a medical doctor and professor at Aarhus University in Denmark. Coming up next, speaking of AI, robots can code, but can they schmooze? No. So are extroverts about to run the office? Smooth talkers? People with good soft skills? Is that what's going to be in demand in the future? And can introverts use AI to help them keep up? Up next, we'll talk what real human connection means in the future where bots take our busy work.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Where intellectual honesty gets witness protection from social prosecution. The Last Show with David Cooper.
The soft skills the robots cannot do. If you are good at schmoozing, being likable and overly chatty in a lively and friendly way, you do not have to worry about ChatGPT taking your job. I'm here with someone who wrote how extroverts might thrive in a workplace with jobs being replaced by AI. His name is Tim Paradis. He's a future of work correspondent at Business Insider. And I'm excited to chat, maybe schmooze with him. Tim, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I love the headline, Robots Can't Schmooze. I know I just gave a crude definition of schmoozing, but what does it look like and what did it look like in the workplace before AI seemed to take over and automate things?
I think schmoozing is one of those things that, like that famous definition of pornography, right? We all know it when we see it. I think it's something where people, you just know they're. I think we put in the piece, glad handing and finger guns and all the stuff, right? That's a little over the top, but it's people who are good at connecting with other people, and sometimes it can feel a little bit BS-y maybe, but they are often, pretty good at just connecting with folks.
Everyone who's been at a large company looks at some individual in a senior position who's very likable, and they look at him or her and they're like, why do they have this job? They are incompetent, but everyone loves them. There is a certain amount of schmooze factor that can get you ahead in the workplace that you cannot automate, can you?
Well, it's sometimes called the personality hire. You're right that there are people like that. And I think there's probably multiple types here, but there are certainly people who are very good at what they do and also are very likable and can schmooze well. But then there might be some folks that are, to your point, incompetent, but somehow have the job just because, they're likable or they organize the, company football team or something like that. So, it's an interesting thing to think about how people get ahead and the skills that they use prior to AI. I mean, I think it's a lot of the same stuff. I'm sure that they're doing now. And it's just the question is, will AI affect this at all? And if so, what way?
Well, I guess that's the great question. This soft skills premium, it's something that we desire in others. And to your point, yes, we prefer those that have great soft skills and are competent. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's still going to be a huge value for people like that who can connect with other people or really see through org charts and know what personalities are going to go great with one another? These skills that computers just can't do.
So it's interesting. I hear from employers all the time that and they'll say it in surveys as well, that one of the main things that they're after are soft skills, because as even prior to AI, as certain things would get automated or sort of, made more and more efficient, that there was a real premium placed on people who could work in teams and could collaborate and get along with other people and get everyone to, get to the same conclusion. So I think that those things are continuing to be important. And I think it's just a question of, I suppose, to what degree, but I don't think that those things are going to go away. There's also some research, which is somewhat sobering, I suppose, but that there are some AI abilities they're pretty good at soft skills too. So you might have read a little bit, exactly. You might have read a little bit about, like people using AI for, say, behavioral health assistance or things like that, right? So you sort of have your AI shrink or what have you. So it's pretty good at that too, but the difference is, of course, human to human, like what we're doing now, is still going to be different than if you're interacting with a chatbot. And eventually you may forget you're interacting with a bot, but something like this on video, it's easy. It's easy because it's face to face.
Is there a day in the life in the not too distant future where AI handles a lot of the grunt work in the office and humans just come in for conversations? And if so, who thrives in that environment?
It's a great question. I mean, that's the I suppose the thesis that a lot of AI backers and supporters are promoting. It should be said that a lot of companies are investing enormous sums of money into this area. So in some ways, they're talking their own book a little bit if they say we're going to be able to use this technology to take a lot of work off the table and therefore free up people to do other things. So it's unclear, but I think certain roles certainly are more susceptible, if you will, to this than others. If you work in a call center or something like that, you may find that they don't need 30 people. Maybe they just need 10 because they've got chatbots that are doing some of the tertiary stuff. And then you just escalate to people for really serious things. Or maybe it becomes kind of like a bespoke thing where you get to actually talk to a person and that feels like a treat. But, it is unclear, I guess, how much of the back office work will be taken over. But that is the thesis that a lot of companies and a lot of investors are supporting.
If schmoozing is a soft skill that's going to be more and more prized, how do you recommend people learn it for those who don't know how to schmooze?
Well, of course, the perverse answer is you can go to AI and ask for tips on that. And one of the folks I spoke to for this piece is an organizational psychologist and was saying that who also runs a company, was saying that he had people on his team who were more introverted and did struggle a little bit with some of these things, and they did just that. They went to AI and said, "Hey, I need to approach the client about X, Y, and Z. What's a good way to do that?" And they actually got tips. And he said it was really transformational for these people. This is not by any means an official study or anything like this. These are just anecdotes from his experience, but he said it was really helpful for those folks in boosting their confidence and in boosting some of their skills around that. So it's like anything, you can work at it, I think. And I know a lot of people that I talk to who are leaders who say, look, I'm maybe a little bit more introverted. I'm not not somebody who's just born as super outgoing, but they kind of push themselves almost. It's like they're going on stage or something like that, and they adopt sort of a work persona where they have to go around and glad hand people in a at a break at a conference or something like that, and they just kind of get into a mode. So I think it's possible for people to do that.
It's good that hopefully it is a skill that can be learned. Otherwise, people with different cultural backgrounds who don't come from schmoozy backgrounds or people who are neurodivergent, like they're going to be held back in an environment. We would want to fix that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've done some reporting as well on neurodivergent workplaces and people who are, or neurodivergence rather, in the workplace. And there does seem to be some worlds where AI and people who are sort of wired that way can really do quite well together and can team up. There are companies that are even hiring for people who are neurodivergent because of certain skill sets that people may have. So I do think that there's opportunity, but there's also, you're right, there's also a challenge of if conversation, going back to your earlier question, or if work becomes just a place where you come in and you just check that the machines are doing all the stuff in the background and everything is humming along, and then you just have to go and chat with people and sort of have meetings and do face-to-face stuff, it could be harder for certain people, for sure.
So would this be a recommendation to like new grads or people just entering the workforce, entry-level positions I've heard are decreasing, to just really get sharp on your soft skills? So if you get that interview, you will come off well. I mean, I feel like this isn't new advice, but it's becoming increasingly important advice.
100%. Yeah, it's not new advice. This is nothing new. Knowing how to interact with people and come across as polished and professional and even likable matters in the workplace. It always has. But to your point, that's the thing. If you're painting with a broad brush here and maybe using a stereotype of the quiet person who wanted to work in, say, accounting in the back room, didn't really want to put their head up too much. If that person can no longer go to that back cubicle and sort of stay out of the way, hypothetically, if AI takes on a lot of that work, then there might be a challenge. They might have to say, gee, I'm going to have to get a little bit better at interacting with folks the way some of the, again, stereotype here, but the folks in marketing or sales might do,
I guess my last question, your hunch based on whoever's left in the office in the coming years, do you think AI is going to make them better communicators or worse communicators with one another?
One of the researchers I spoke to for this, who described herself as, who has done research on this and who described herself as an introvert, said she fears that as we farm out some of these soft skills, like even, say, helping us generate emails that sound warm and fuzzy to colleagues, that she said it could become a thing where we just lose a little bit of our ability to do that because we're just not as good at we don't practice it, essentially, right? Sort of use it or lose it. So that's her fear. But she did say, on a more optimistic note, that it really does bounce back quickly. So she gave the example when she spends her summers with her head down doing research, she's a little bit less capable when it comes to communicating with groups. But then when she gets back in the classroom in the fall and she's got a room full of students, she said, it takes me a little bit of time to warm up, but once I get back, I'm back. So
if our brains atrophy by using AI too much, we can recover quickly if we just interact with people and do the work ourselves.
That's the hope, right? We got to hope for that.
Well, Tim Paradis is a future of work correspondent at Business Insider. Check out his article, Robots Can't Schmooze, Why Extroverts May Thrive in an AI-Filled Workplace. Tim, thanks for talking to me. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
After the break, a weird gender split observed in Gen Z's job market. Men are facing rising unemployment as entry-level roles are disappearing, and women are gaining stability, a foothold in healthcare and education. Is new technology to blame? A bad economy? Our culture? And should young people now chase the promise of stability versus the uncertainty of good pay?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
There is a fracture in Gen Z's job market. It's splitting. Young men face rising unemployment as AI seems to thin out entry-level roles together with a cooling job market. But young women are gaining stability in education and healthcare jobs. I want to talk about this emerging divide with someone who recently wrote about it. She's an economy reporter at Business Insider. Her name is Allie Kelly. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Big picture, why are Gen Z young men sliding off a career cliff while women seem to be finding a firmer footing, having less of a hard time?
One of the things that we're seeing in the job market right now, David, is that a lot of white-collar roles, traditionally business, finance, government-related sectors, are really not hiring right now. We're seeing a really significant slowdown in vacancies across a lot of these roles. And for Gen Zers, particularly Gen Zers with a college degree, they're in their early 20s, they just have a bachelor's degree, they're looking for work. It is really, really hard to get a job right now because there's less opportunities, there's less openings. We've seen, a lot of government agencies wipe out jobs completely under DOGE. We've seen a lot of these big tech firms are undergoing a lot of layoffs, and then they're not hiring a lot of new talent in order to cut costs. And then while we're not seeing the full expansion of AI in the job market and the full effects of that quite yet, it is definitely affecting a lot of these traditionally, white collar roles that people have gotten college degrees for. So that's happening to all of Gen Z. One of the things that we're noticing, though, is that men are dominant in a lot of these white collar industries that are struggling, whereas women are dominant in the very few healthy corners of the job market right now. So we saw the July jobs report really disappointing in terms of, the lack of growth that we're seeing in terms of jobs. The unemployment ticked up a little bit. And then we're also seeing, it's harder to even break in and get a job right now. And that's what I've heard from a lot of job seekers that I've talked to as well. But women are dominant in healthcare, in education, and in hospitality, which are kind of the few sectors right now that are growing, that are hiring. And so women have a higher likelihood of being employed right now versus young men.
Now, is AI really that good at doing entry-level jobs? Is that truly the primary reason, or is a cooling economy also a very good explanation? And these two things together make that perfect storm.
I think that it is a little bit more of a perfect storm situation. We really don't know how AI is going to affect the labor market. We're seeing that, change a little bit in the early phases, but right now it's maybe changing the tasks people do versus, taking a whole lot of jobs. And it's hard to really separate that on the data, like from a data standpoint of like how much are jobs being taken by AI versus, a lot of other factors in the job market. So emerging technology is a factor. Also, just a slowing economy. We have kind of had recession fears throughout the year. We've had, kind of changing policies that are spooking the way that companies, they're hesitant to hire. They're looking to cut costs. It's very kind of en vogue right now to sort of streamline bureaucracy and flatten managerial roles and all of that kind of stuff.
Do more with less. I hear that one thrown around at so many tech companies.
Exactly. And that's happening across corporate America right now. And not only is that affecting middle managers who are often, on that layoff chopping block, but Gen Zers who are graduating college and looking for that first role. The number of internships, the number of entry-level roles is really shrinking in a lot of these kind of white-collar corporate America type jobs. And we're not sure when that is going to pick up again. I think that it's something that Gen Z, and regardless of gender, but I think men in particular, are thinking about how else can I find steady work. We've seen that 20-somethings are turning a little bit more toward blue collar, more trade-based jobs, which is an interesting shift away from, the traditional path to success. But the traditional path to success is disappearing for a lot of this generation.
Well, there is that wisdom that like my dad would have told me, which is go where the jobs are. But if blue collar and healthcare are hiring and stable right now, but they pay less than those cushy tech jobs, even though entry-level cushy tech jobs are disappearing, is it smart advice to choose stability over pay right now?
I think that's really the root of the challenge for young people looking for a job right now. Particularly men who are facing that higher rate of unemployment, is some of those steadier jobs are ones that historically have less benefits, have less pay. And while Gen Z, has seen decent wage growth, in comparison to, inflation and stuff like that, it's tricky to think like, oh, you trained in coding and you were expecting this big cushy tech job. And the best place to find work right now is as a nurse. And yes, that's a completely different set of training. In addition to, it pays less. And so I think that that's something that I don't know if that's a policy solution over time, if that's something that, how can we make these jobs that are so necessary? Healthcare is a great example that it will continue to be so necessary. People always need nurses. People always need doctors. Always need healthcare professionals. And as Gen X and baby boomers, which are really big generations, continue to age, we're going to have significant short-term and long-term care needs even beyond what we have right now. So there's never going to be, suddenly we don't need healthcare jobs anymore. But I think it is challenging for young people to think about, like, I was told that if I learned how to code and I could get a big tech job, and I could, make a bunch of money and be set. And that's not necessarily true anymore. Or at least not at the scale it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And part of that is AI. Part of that is just kind of this like cut cost rhetoric. And it is really challenging for a lot of young people because you're having to reevaluate, what does success look like in the current job market?
I wonder if pay got boosted, if scheduling and lifestyle changed and social status improved if you worked in care work. Would more men switch, or are there cultural walls there that we don't want to admit where men just don't want to take these jobs on average? I'm not talking about every man.
I think that there is definitely like a cultural issue where, men maybe don't want to work in predominantly female fields. And in some ways that's because they don't pay as high. Not always, but in general. And that's a big part of it. I think that, we've heard a lot about like this big manufacturing boom and bringing manufacturing back to America. And in theory, sure, but then people don't really want to take manufacturing jobs either. And so for Gen Z men, it's kind of figuring out, how to break into the job market. And those predominantly male fields are what is struggling right now. And while all of Gen Z is struggling, men are really falling behind. And we're finding that, men are less likely, single men are less likely than single women to own a home, and are actually getting higher education, bachelor's degrees at a slower rate than women. And so there's kind of this like educational and economic divide that continues to grow. And then we're seeing, a lot of the impact on social life and loneliness. And this is how these job market issues are happening to an entire generation, but it is interesting that that kind of gender divide continues to happen.
Well, this has been a really interesting chat about it. I appreciate you coming on the show, Allie. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Allie Kelly is an economy reporter at Business Insider. Check out her article, Gen Z's Career Cliff is Worse for Men Thanks to One Corner of the Job Market. After the break, things will get spicy, so sensitive listeners or parents with small children will want to be advised. Here's what we'll cover. The love chemical, oxytocin, that your body gets after you do it. It doesn't spike immediately after, but 40 minutes after. And for mixed sex couples, it's a little different for men and women. So what does that mean for that window? Should we cuddle? What does it say about closeness? That's a discussion we'll have in a few moments. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
In a recent study, mixed-sex couples had their saliva collected before and after sex to check their oxytocin levels, or simply put, their love hormone levels. And in these individuals, oxytocin levels seemed synchronized with one another and peaked around 40 minutes after doing the deed. It's interesting research, but what is this post-sex window that involves touch, talk, aftercare, and what is it doing to how we feel closeness and how we feel love? That is what we'll discuss here with Dr. Amanda Dennis, a professor of communication from the University of Connecticut, who worked on this research. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this more.
Oxytocin. People talk about it, but I think there are some misunderstandings. I know it's commonly called the love hormone, but what does it actually do to us when it's flowing through our system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is called the love hormone, sometimes the trust hormone, because there's a lot of research that has linked oxytocin to what we would call pro-social behavior. So feeling close and connected to other people, feeling kind of warm and loving towards them. The original studies of oxytocin tended to focus on the parent-child connection. So there's a massive influx of oxytocin when people give birth that helps them bond with their child. But we're realizing now that surge in oxytocin and that effect it has on bonding also happens in other relationships like adult romantic relationships. And so that's kind of where the interest from this study came in about the role that oxytocin plays in social connection. And so we know, for example, in sexual contexts, that oxytocin has been linked to the intensity of orgasm, contentment after orgasm. It increases after sexual activity. And that's kind of on the sexual side of things. But we also know that just kind of warm, loving intimacy, hugging someone, holding their hand, kissing, telling them you care about them, that can also create an oxytocin response as well. So it tends to, facilitate like that bonding, that connection, that closeness. I like to say it's that warm, fuzzy feeling that people get.
I know it well. You studied couples at home, which I love. You studied them. They agreed to, I guess, have sex during an experiment. How do you keep the timing accurate of when you measure this oxytocin? Like, what did the study look like without, getting too silly or graphic, or maybe getting too silly or graphic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the reason we wanted to do this study is because nobody had looked at partnered sex in the home environment. So there's studies of oxytocin that look at things like they've had people have sex in a lab setting, so like in a medical setting. There's studies where people masturbate at home, but we don't really know a lot about in a natural setting when couples are not being told to have sex at any one specific time. And they're doing that with their partner, what does the oxytocin response look like then? And so the way that we did the study is we recruited young adults to participate in a larger project about sexual behavior and sexual communication. And as part of that project, we asked them to take home a saliva collection kit. And so we gave them kind of packets with all the details about how you collect your saliva. And we asked them to engage in sexual behavior in the next 5 days from that appointment. And then to collect a sample immediately before they had sexual activity, and then 3 samples after. So immediately after sexual activity, 20 minutes post-sex, and then 40 minutes post-sex. And so we weren't actually there with them in their home environment, which makes it more natural and comfortable for them. We can see what it actually looks like. The oxytocin levels actually look like around what we would somewhat say is a natural sexual episode. But yeah, we had to give them a lot of instructions to make sure that we were actually capturing the correct time. So we had them fill out worksheets telling us what time exactly they took the samples. We orchestrated them dropping off those samples. They had to freeze them immediately. So we weren't in the bedroom with them. So that is, one of the limitations of the study, but nobody reported any concerns. So we feel pretty confident that they did what they were supposed to do.
Good. And nothing says romance like worksheets. So for me, you would think naively, and I'm wrong, that this level of oxytocin would spike immediately after sex, after orgasm, perhaps. But that's not what you found, was it?
Yeah, our findings were somewhat surprising. So we looked first at the oxytocin across that sexual episode, and we saw that even though this is like statistical, there weren't significant changes in time from pre-sex to post-sex, we did see that men and women had different patterns. So for women, their oxytocin levels started fairly high, and then they dropped down immediately after sex and 20 minutes post-sex, and they ended up being the highest at 40 minutes post-sex. And for men, they started at the lowest and they ended at the highest. So for both men and women, their highest oxytocin levels were actually 40 minutes after sexual activity, not immediately after, which was surprising based on prior research that has generally suggested that you get like an immediate oxytocin response. So at least with the way that we measured it, which was through saliva samples, other studies have tended to use things like blood to measure oxytocin levels. We saw that when we're looking at oxytocin in saliva after sex, it really takes a bit of while to see that increase happen.
Is the practical takeaway that we ought to cuddle for 40 minutes? Like I ought to cuddle for 40 minutes with my lovely, infinitely patient girlfriend who puts up with my BS, but that's a conversation for another day? Like, is that the time where we should be close with our partners? We should touch each other then? We should cuddle, do things like that?
Yeah. So actually a whole other piece of my research and another paper from this project looked at what we would call the post-sex time interval and the actual communication behaviors you engage in. And in general, my research on what I would call pillow talk would say that that's a really important time to connect with your partner, because even if the oxytocin levels haven't peaked until those 40 minutes, the time leading up to that is a highly intimate time. Hormones are surging. There's a lot of opportunities for connection. And we do see that when people increase their pillow talk, it tends to be related to having a happier, more fulfilling relationship. So there are some positive outcomes that we've seen from increasing that post-sex interval affectionate behavior. So yeah, it might take a while for those oxytocin levels to increase, but definitely making the most of that time period, I think generally benefits couples and their pair bonding.
Now I feel really weird about bringing Ken Jennings into my bedroom. We watch Jeopardy while cuddling afterward. Is that what you recommend, basically? Couples spend that 40 minutes being intimate, maybe not like sexually intimate, but sort of emotionally intimate?
Yeah, I think so. Like whatever you define as intimacy. And of course that changes across the course of a relationship. It's not always just like staring into each other's eyes and holding one another. For some people, it might be sharing media, sharing funny videos on your phone, watching something together. I think whatever kind of you've established as your unique pattern of intimacy and connection, using that time to really build upon it is always great. And I know that for many couples, maybe 40 minutes in a busy day, or if you have children in the household, isn't feasible. But even just taking, 10 to 15 minutes, whatever they can spare, knowing your oxytocin levels are going to continue to increase most likely, and you'll still get benefits after that episode is done.
Were you surprised not to find a strong tie between an oxytocin spike and orgasm, like immediately thereafter or during sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. The previous research, and there's not that much research on this topic that has actually measured oxytocin levels, but the research that is out there led us to believe that there would be a connection between orgasm and oxytocin. And we found that for women, their oxytocin levels before sex actually were marginally associated with an increase in their odds of orgasming during the sexual activity. But the sexual activity itself, so having an orgasm during that episode, wasn't actually connected to higher oxytocin levels. And yeah, that was really surprising because previous research would suggest that it should be.
What else would you like to explore in this area? Like what's next, or what are some areas that we don't know much about that you'd like questions answered in?
Yeah, I would love to continue thinking about how our hormonal responses during these really intimate sexual episodes are linked to our communication. As a professor of communication, I'm really interested in how people kind of use these really special, intimate, protected times to build their relationships and the ways that those can then benefit them outside of the bedroom. So not just thinking about the sexual episode as an opportunity for physical connection, but also for emotional connection and bonding that overall helps couples thrive and stay close and connected. So continuing to look at oxytocin, both in sexual episodes or just other intimate contexts. So holding one another, kissing, cuddling, and seeing if there's other patterns that are interesting that link how we talk to the people we care about most to our bodily responses.
Well, Dr. Amanda Dennis is a professor of communication at the University of Connecticut. Amanda, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great.
After the break, there is an odd gap between claiming I'm great with reading feelings and actually reading them. People who have narcissism often rate themselves as good with emotional intelligence, reading feelings, and then fail real tests. In a few moments, we'll explain what emotional intelligence means and whether you can train empathy in people who don't naturally have it that lasts.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting from the neutral zone, where every perspective gets diplomatic immunity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
We are joined by a psychology researcher who studies personality and emotions. And a new paper they've written finds something surprising. People high in narcissism say they're great at reading your feelings, but don't actually do well on tests to measure that. So if you think you're the best thing since sliced bread and you think you're great at reading people, you might want to think again. I am here with Louana Denogent, who's at the University of Malaga. Louana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited today because on behalf of my colleagues as well, because we've been researching this for a while, and it's just such an interesting topic. It's really in the media right now, narcissism. We're talking about it so much, like, oh, my narcissistic partner, oh, my narcissistic coworker. And I think it's a good subject to bring up.
That label does get thrown around on social media and TikTok. I think a little too much. I think people who don't have the skills to make the call, or someone does one thing and then they're labeled it for the rest of the day and the rest of their life, I think that might be wrong. But I want to back up a bit. I've talked about it a bit on the show before, but I always love hearing a definition of what the dark triad of traits are.
Yeah, dark triad. Isn't that like a big word, isn't it? So like dark triad is basically 3 core traits of personality that are noted as dark because they have like bad consequences to them generally. So it's narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. I mean, psychopathy for most of us probably sounds like bad.
Scary.
And it actually is, quite scary. And to be honest, it is the darkest of the 3. So it's basically a construct of those 3 personality traits. And what's interesting is we all kind of score in all 3 of them a little bit to a degree. Like we can all take the test and see how high we score in each of those traits. But of course, there are certain levels where it can get a bit more alarming, and you can see, deceitful behaviors, aggression, and manipulation tactics,
All the fun stuff.
All the fun stuff, and sometimes you see it a bit late, you detect it a bit late in people. And that's also something that's very interesting in the research. We want to detect it with more prevention earlier on, basically.
So let's zoom into narcissism. Do you want to define that a little bit more, just so we can get away from the people on TikTok who have absolutely no credentials and talk about it perhaps incorrectly?
Yeah, let's clarify that because we don't want to be throwing it around. But it is, so it's a dark triad personality trait. And essentially, people that score high in this trait, they kind of see themselves as grandiose, they kind of see themselves as greater than they are. They have this sense of entitlement. They look for constant validation. They think they're above other people, basically. But more alarmingly is the aspect of like the lack of empathy that individuals that score highly in this trait can have, can present, and it affects their relationships with other people because they don't detect correctly their emotions, or understand other people's feelings and then manage those in a correct civil way.
And I think that lends nicely to this concept of emotional intelligence. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that and how that comes to play with someone who scores high in narcissism?
Yeah, absolutely. So emotional intelligence is like our ability to perceive, so kind of see our emotions, understand them, kind of try and put a label on them, be able to express them, manage them. So it's a whole group of certain aspects that we consider emotional intelligence. It's actually got several aspects to it. But essentially, people who score highly in narcissism, we've noticed that their emotional intelligence and also the dark triad in general score kind of low on emotional intelligence. And so this is something that has sparked a lot of research in recent years because people want to essentially try and intervene, like prevent the negative consequences that we were talking about, like aggression, manipulation, all these things that sometimes are even covered up and we don't notice them until it's like too late. And all of a sudden, all my friends are against me, or I've lost my job when I was doing great, and all this stuff, right? So working on emotional intelligence is something that we've been trying to link essentially to narcissism and the other two traits I mentioned.
It strikes a chord with me because when I started going to a psychiatrist after I split up with my ex-wife, like the first 2 years, every session was me trying to improve my emotional intelligence, which I then realized was sort of not great. Now, whether that means I was a narcissist, I'm talking about myself in this interview, probably means that I am, but let's get back on track. As a possible intervention, could we educate people who score high in narcissism to improve their emotional intelligence, and that could potentially lower their amount of narcissism that they score in?
That is such a valid question. And to be honest, it's still something that's being researched because, of course, narcissism is a personality trait. So it tends to be relatively stable. But within the aspects of empathy, and not to get too technical, but we can learn about empathy, right? We can learn that certain things are going to hurt other people. But people who score highly in these traits, they don't really feel sort of like the guilt, for example, etc. Now, finding a link between the traits and emotional intelligence was kind of like the first stepping stone to get closer to justification, like a reason to intervene on emotional intelligence and try and get insights on how that could help these individuals as well. Because if they don't have quality relationships, that's encouraged for a quality life as well. So it's something that is being researched, and it's extremely interesting. And a lot of people score highly in these traits, and we don't even know about it. I think it would be interesting in like companies, for example.
Yeah, like CEOs or directors
Exactly.
or people in powerful positions.
Exactly.
The crux of some of your research, though, people who do score high in narcissism think they like are high in emotional intelligence. They think they're great at reading people, think they're great at understanding their own emotions. And what you found is if you're self-reporting, yes, these people are great at it. But when you actually test for it, the story is different.
Yeah, it's a different story entirely because we realize that actually their emotional intelligence isn't that high. But like we said, right, they see themselves as more than they are, these individuals that score highly on narcissism. So it kind of makes sense as well that in research we confirm that in fact these individuals are going to see themselves as more intelligent as they really are, right? Because they just value and esteem themselves highly. They overestimate their abilities.
Is there a practical takeaway for people who either suspect they score high in these, or maybe they work or live with someone who does? Like, is there anything from your research we can use to kind of help us interact with people who score high in narcissism?
Right. So I think that sometimes because it's very hard to detect these traits, especially if they're not that high, they're just at a certain level, but they're already causing harm. I think that my advice would be trust also your instincts. Stepping away a little bit from a scientific point of view, but also just trusting our human instincts, our basic instincts of being like, I'm not sure how I feel about this person. It's a bit too good to be true. They're a bit too charming. I need to step away maybe a little bit. And within themselves, that's a valid question too, but they probably won't seek help because they think they're perfect, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, the only person who thinks I'm perfect is my mother, so maybe I have nothing to worry about. Well, and Louana Denogent is a psychology researcher at the University of Malaga. Louana, thank you for joining me. This was a great chat, interesting one. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much. We're honored.
Coming up next, we will be joined by foreign correspondent Tony Five for something real fun like the artist who turned New York's lost gloves, bike seats, and otherwise discarded items into shockingly lifelike birds you can spot in Central Park. It's trash alchemy, it's pigeon gossip, and why a cardinal made from a sneaker still feels tender. The artist who's created these very curious bird sculptures that you're going to be interested in, Tony Five and me, in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
And in bird news, we are joined by Tony Five, foreign correspondent, to talk to an artist today. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, I've never heard you call me an artist, but yes, I do dabble. I do dabble in a lot of little things.
No, not you. We're talking about New York's wildest flock that isn't in the trees. It's handmade. It's sculpted birds in Central Park, and we are going to talk to a bird sculptor who creates strange objects, Tony.
This is fantastic. Tell me more, my friend. Tell me more. Tell me you've got him.
I do. He's right here. He's a German artist who just finished an artist in residency at ISCP in New York, and his name is Matthias Garff. Matthias, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Matthias, hello. How are you?
Hi. Good. I'm good. I'm here in Leipzig, Germany.
Back in Germany, got kicked out of America. Good. That's the same as me. Tell me all about how you have created these wonderful sculptures. So you were in residency, but tell us more.
Yeah, you were in Central Park and you were inspired by birds there, weren't you?
Yeah, so I really love birds. I did a lot of bird sculpture. So I'm a sculptor. I work mainly with found materials, and yeah, I was there in New York for half a year, often in Central Park, and I realized that there are so many species of birds you can observe there. So I just started to build them out of things I found on the streets, like old gloves, shoes, everything like I could pick. And then I built like kind of puppets. So my idea was to bring them to build those birds and then bring them back into their natural habitat, like to film. So I placed them in different parts of the park, on Central Park, and filmed them. So I'm working now on like short videos about bird life, and I'm talking about those birds. And yeah, this was really fun.
You were sort of like a bird puppeteer in a way.
Yeah, that was kind of new for me. Like I did a lot of sculptures before, but never like this was a new approach to bring them to movement. So I thought it would be great if they actually can act and do their things, so what birds normally do. And so I had time during my residency, so I developed this idea and so I connected with a lot of bird enthusiasts, and like I met like a nice group, the New York City queer birders. So I was often with them. They were showing me their like all those species you can observe, and yeah. So this was really fun. And in the end, so I thought to do those videos, and then I realized like many people were asking me what I'm doing there in the park, and I explained. Often they thought it's like they are real in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then I explained, and so I had the idea to do like a kind of an outdoor exhibition. So I placed them in the park, and the visitors got like binoculars and a kind of a checklist. So the aim was to spot all of my sculptures around, and
a scavenger hunt of sorts.
Yeah. That's
so essentially you made these sculptures out of the stuff you found around Central Park. So how many were made of like dead bodies and like heroin needles?
That's part of the found objects in Central Park.
A good question.
David, I've been to Central Park, so I mean, there must have been a bird made out of a couple of dead arms, some heroin needles, and some used condoms, right? Otherwise, I don't believe you, Matthias. I just do not believe you.
I don't know which parts of Central Park you prefer, but like maybe I mean I didn't pick everything. I didn't pick everything I found around. Like I chose my materials. So, but
Good.
yeah, not the dirty stuff, but
Central Park is next to one of the weirdest cities in the world. Like, I mean, it's in the middle of it. You're thick in nature, but then you get these strange interactions with people in Central Park, and you as an artist are creating kind of interest. So you must have had some weird things happen to you while you were in the park, either observing birds or showing off your sculptures.
yeah. I mean, I was surprised actually. Like, I think New Yorkers are quite kind of used, like that people doing strange things. So not everybody was like asking me what I'm doing. That was kind of surprising for me. But then, yeah, like many stopped and like. Especially like bird lovers, they told me about all their bird stories, and I heard about a lot about Flaco. I don't know if you heard about this. Yeah,
Yeah, the owl that died sadly. Yeah.
yeah. So it was kind of those stories I heard often. So
Well, one of the great things about New York is no matter how eccentric you are as a person, as an artist, no matter how strange what you're doing is, one block away there's somebody stranger. And so the idea that New Yorkers would walk by your odd sculptures and just treat it like it's another Tuesday is so like quintessentially New York. Was that kind of a new thing for you?
yeah, I mean the whole thing was not new for me. It was like the first time I worked like in public space, like outside in the park. So it was a new experience for me. So yeah, but first I was kind of shy. Like I had ideas where to place the birds, but it took me a while to get into like my game with those birds. But then it felt quite. I felt quite comfortable, especially because people were so friendly and those who were like interested, they stopped and were looking, and it was. I would repeat it.
What made you pick Central Park in New York of all the parks and open spaces in the world?
I mean, I had this chance for the residency, so I was searching for like a project I could do there. So for this half year. And then, of course, because Central Park is so iconic, and especially for birds, it's a very special place. So I redid my research and found out that it's in a very important, like on a very important flight road between Canada and South America. And all the birds, they are crossing New York, but the only green spot they see from the air is Central Park. So you can observe as well like quite exotic birds there.
Wow. I didn't know. It's like a layaway place when you're flying to a different place.
Yeah, doing like migration. There's like in April, end of April, May is the migration season. So a lot of warblers and all kind of little birds are arriving. And so this is kind of special. So, and for me, it was the first time in New York. So I chose the Central Park because it was the only park I knew. I realized when I was there, I realized there are a lot of other huge parks around in the city.
There are. How was experiencing New York and the strangers and the weird things in New York from where you were in, I guess, Germany before?
Yeah. I live in Germany, Leipzig. So it's not so big. There's like 500,000 people living here. So it was a great experience. So there's so much to discover, and I met a lot of nice people. So I mean, it's just quite expensive. So
I mean, even if you're doing artistic stuff with found rubbish, it is still very expensive. I mean, is there a takeaway? Is there a takeaway from your work? Like, what's the recurring message that you'd like sort of people to take away from your work?
I mean, I think I really want to share my like curiosity or like fascination about biodiversity, and especially like that there is so much wildlife even in our cities around, and we often forget it. So I think birds especially, they remind us about like that we are living on a shared planet like with a lot of other beings. And I think I try to find with my sculptures spark like this curiosity, or like that you are more aware about like your surrounding. And
speaking of wildlife and urban environments, do we have a sculpture project on the horizon involving the rats and cockroaches in their natural habitat of garbage in the future?
It would be great. Like if I get the chance, I come back to New York. There's a lot. Yeah, there are a lot of other species I could think of.
Well, Matthias Garff is an artist. He's German-based, and he just finished an artist in residency at ISCP in New York. What a pleasure it was having you on the show. Where can people find you online?
It's Garff, GARFF.de, my website.
Tony, thanks for being here as well.
David, we've talked about birds, we've talked about rubbish. Fantastic.
We've checked all the boxes. Matthias, thanks again.
Thanks. Ciao.
After the break, we look into the past to give our future selves advice. If you've got advice for your future self, call us. The number coming up right now. Maybe you'll be on the show. Maybe you won't. But hey, that's up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Advice for your tomorrow's self from yesterday, or maybe from today for tomorrow. If you're confused, you're not alone. This is what happens on the last show with David Cooper and Tony Five.
Jingle first, content second here on the last show. Tony Five joins me for advice from your yesterday's self for today, which is tomorrow from yesterday today. Tony, welcome.
The creed we live by, my friend. Jingle first, content second.
It's always jingles first, content second. The jingle's the best part you'll ever hear on this show.
Yeah, it starts high and then just drops down slowly.
We get a lot of complaints about what we do here, that it's not easy to understand. It's very simple. Yesterday, today is tomorrow from yesterday, but yesterday we recorded some advice for our future selves, and today we will play that advice and follow up with it. It's a time machine of sorts. It's so simple. Advice for your tomorrow self from yesterday today. Easy peasy.
I think that's the way to go. It's very simple. We do have a blackboard. If anybody wants to know, if you could just email tony@lastshow.pizza, I can send you the blackboard, which has got all the explanations on it.
All right, Tony, here is your advice from your yesterday self to be played today.
Hello, dear boy. Yes, advice for today. For tomorrow, that I will take very seriously from the rest of my life, and I've just thought about it now, is never accept phone calls from David while he's sat on his toilet and he has to cover his whilst he's doing it. Even though I do indeed love his toilet. That's my advice for today, tomorrow, yesterday, and the future. Over to you, my friend.
Is it rude to call your friends on a video call when you happen to be in the restroom, Tony?
I mean, you could have just called me. I was like half asleep, and then I see you in the, I wouldn't call it the fetal position, but the position, and like just see you at that angle. You know, the angle that always people do when they're on the toilet, so that you can kind of see them like maybe 32 degrees and it goes across them and you can see them.
Yeah,
so I knew you were on the toilet straight away.
It's censored. It's parental guidance. It's not rated X.
But at the same time, I was very excited to see your toilet. As listeners may not know, David has an absolutely phenomenal toilet.
I do. Well, first of all, we got the bidet attachment, which is so key. I mean, how can you live a life without a bidet? A life without a bidet is a life not worth living.
Now, just to clarify, having the bidet means that you don't use toilet paper, or do you?
No, of course, you got it. I mean, you got it. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the bidet for?
It's just that additional cleaning. I know that you're not allowed to have them in the UK because your like plumbing system is so sensitive or something like that.
Well, weirdly, our drinking water and our wastewater is not on the same pipe, but it's basically on the same routine. So if you don't put wastewater back in a certain way or a certain filtered, it can be classed as illegal. But you'd have to basically, I spoke to a guy who said if everybody in my estate developed salmonella and waterborne poisoning and they find out it was my toilet, then I can be sued. But unless that happens, I'm absolutely fine.
Yeah, there's some law like this fractional percentage of a chance that wastewater could go back into the water supply. Anything in the UK, they really don't like that, or they make laws around that, even though it doesn't happen, practically speaking. Here in North America, I think the system's the same-ish, but we don't have those laws.
And you've got rats everywhere.
That's also true.
Yeah. I am investigating it though, weirdly. So there is a way you can do it by these manufacturers who do import them into the UK. So I have had somebody come out and give me a quote. Weirdly, I did have to sit on the toilet for the quote. Because he has to measure like where things are. So it's really interesting.
It's not that kind of quote, Tony.
No.
My advice, I'm a little ashamed. I did something a little unethical. Here it is. Hello, David. Your advice for tomorrow, which is today for you now, but yesterday for you now, but tomorrow from me, which is I'm right now, I'm yesterday, is you cheated. You listened to Tony's advice, so you know what he's going to say on the show.
What?
But to that end, if you are going to call your friends while you happen to be in the washroom, the restroom, the lavatory, the loo, and you're going to FaceTime them from Le Toilette, you should let them know first. It's kind of rude to not let them know that you're calling them like that on FaceTime with video. That's your advice. Don't cheat. Don't listen ahead. Don't listen to what Tony sends you. You should be listening it for the first time on the show. But other than not cheating, warn your friends before calling them on Le Toilette. Goodbye. Is it normal to call your friends from the restroom with a video call?
After that comment, how many people do you call on? I know you and Miranda have that wonderful relationship where you can talk to each other on the toilet. It's very frowned upon here. They call that in a dating. That's where you've hit like the comfort level.
Rock bottom.
So you've been dating, yeah, and you can talk to each other when each one's on the toilet.
We don't do that, but I think that's with my ex. We did. I think Miranda just like has healthy boundaries, and I don't.
Right.
But in terms of FaceTime calling with my friends, well, I'm in. I could be in bed, I could be in the restroom, like in compromising situations. I would say I do that with almost all my friends, and some do it back, some just accept it as an eccentricity of mine. So to me, it's kind of normal. But every time I add a new friend into the fold and they get that first call from me in bed with, no clothes on, they get a little concerned, I think.
Oh, good Lord. So yeah, I do find it strange. But then I find a lot of stuff you do strange. Like, how's your oral health? Do you still brush your teeth daily?
Of course. I scrape my tongue, I floss, I water pick, I soft pick, I do it all. I'm very fastidious about oral hygiene.
And a water pick. Now, I was introduced to water picking recently, and it's basically it fires a little jet between your teeth, and you can do it to scrape your tongue and also. Fascinating thing. I mean, I can't believe I've lived my life without it.
Yeah, I know. We're giving out free brand advertising. Maybe we should try to get sponsored by Big Tongue Scraper and Big Water Pick.
I know that they control a lot of the industry over there.
They do.
So yeah, if you're listening, Water Pick or whatever, please, we'd love some freebies. My tongue is filthy at the moment.
What are some routines or things that you do with your friends that others would find strange?
So I'm terrible for doing multiple things at the same time. So I will call someone whilst I'm on the laptop, whilst I'm eating my dinner at the same time. So I'll be doing 3 or 4 and watching TV or maybe walking the dog, and I'll call people. So I'm never sort of fully there, maybe 20%, 25%, which leaves the rest of the 60% just somewhere else.
And that's the short version of your prep for this show. Now, I don't think that's weird or odd. I just think that's rude, Tony.
Well, it's not rude. Well, listen, says the man on the toilet as he talks to me.
Paying 100% of my attention to you.
How can you be paying 100%? 50% of that is going on your bowels. so that's awful anyway. And then another 20% is over your trying to cover it up.
No, I'm focused on the call. I can do those things in the background while I focus on you, the person I'm calling.
Well, I can do the same things. That's what I'm saying. I do those things. It may be a little bit noisy, but I can still hold a proper conversation and whatever. There may be a pause.
I don't know. I've been on the other end of the phone with you when you're distracted, and you can't. You think you can, but you can't.
Oh, that's just you.
Oh, fine. Do you have any other odd things, routines?
I think I've told you once, and you always found it really strange. Whenever I sign my name, I close my eyes.
But what does that have to do with routines with friends? You're just trying to pick odd things here because you can't think of anything.
Oh, routines with friends. What do I do? Oh, I'll tell you what I do. I always ask them, are you okay? Are you okay? And you always pick me up on that because in like North America, are you okay is like an emergency, like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Whereas in England, it's like, are you fine? Or
what's up? Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah.
And I do that a lot, and I think it's quite noticeable. I always wonder if a person in my company is happy to be in my company. Maybe it's a sort of insecurity of mine. Like, are you okay? Are you having fun? Is everything okay? Are you okay? So I will do that, and it is quite noticeable. Like, people have picked up on it before. What else do you do apart from talking to people on the
I can tell you that the secret to worrying about whether people are happy in your company or not, I've got a trick that can prevent you from having this worried. I just always assume they don't want to be in my company. And
yes.
if I get any evidence to the contrary, it's just a pleasant surprise.
Do you even believe it, though? Because you believe that no one likes your company. When they do actually appear to like your company, are you like, no, that's not true?
Definitely. Tony Five, foreign correspondent, thank you for being here, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Loving life, loving North America, South America, East America, and the other one.
Yes, the other one. That's the one we really have to worry about. Tony Five, again, our foreign correspondent. He joins us from his home in London, England, every day for whatever he joins us for. What a great sign off for him. That is our Tuesday night show. Thank you for tuning into it. Don't forget The Last Show, available as a podcast. If you've heard this before but haven't subscribed, you should. Head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza in your web browser, not .com. And there you can find out details about that podcast, including how to subscribe. I am David Cooper, and this was definitely not the first show.
Well, you've heard me on the radio and you've listened to my podcast. Well, now you can watch me on YouTube for thought-provoking conversation, fearless interviews that you won't get anywhere else. The Ben Mulroney Show every single day. So go to YouTube, subscribe to The Ben Mulroney Show, and never miss an episode.